All right. Anything good for the cause for today? Either here at home, anything good? All right. Another spring day here in Minnesota. There we go. Minnesota. We say it actually in Dakota. Minnesota. So we would say it. All right. So with that, today I want to give us some time. We'll work on the domestic and foreign policy of Mao. But before that, I want to highlight a little bit of that Cultural Revolution. And I know some of us are trying to find some information about youth. And we have to look at the youth in terms of how they're being used in programs and campaigns. All right. And so the youth are going to have a pretty big role in the Cultural Revolution. And sometimes when we think of youth, it is just the education, and education is going on. But it's about how they are being used in programs in regards to Mao's China. So that's a big piece there. Another question was raised about mass media, and it's all about part of mass media is creating a cult of personality. So I would focus on creating the cult of personality when you're doing this domestic and foreign policy activity piece. Okay. To start off, though, I want us to do some hard thinking. So I've got an idea here. I have a question and see if we can get a discussion going on this question. Whether here at home and at home, you put it in the chat, it'd be great. Millions of people died in Mao's various programs for improving People's Republic of China. Can good occur through the destruction of people? as we get some chuckles on that one here. Can good occur through the destruction of people? What do we think on that one? What's that? It's a trick question. This is IB. All right. You know, there's always a motive, perhaps. There's always a little trickery in there in some ways. What makes it tricky? Let's talk about that. What makes it tricky? Okay. Okay. All right. So I think weeks ago, I might have said there's no innocent language. All right. And so destruction is not an innocent language. It's purposeful in me. So intention. All right. I think that's something there you brought up about intention. It's a good one. All right. Go ahead.
I think just as a general answer, like historically, unfortunately, yes, good can occur through the destruction of people. Because if you think about like there's countries where there was a lot of conflict and then something really, really bad happened. And now it's like kind of okay.
All right. Can you give me do you have a specific example?
Well, like Rwanda.
Okay. Wow. All right. It is a fast growing economy. It's kind of like the Silicon Valley in Africa. And so, all right, that's a good example. And quite a few people did die in the Rwandan genocide. All right. Okay. So yeah, you can find examples like that in history. So if we learn from history, there you go. You have those examples. All right. What else can we throw in there? What else can we add to our discussion? Intentions. Yes, it can. What else? What do we got? There we go. Identifying who they're trying to destroy, the people that are being identified. Okay. Want to build on that, though? Still trying to. Gotcha. So could these be people that are purposely targeted that may not be viewed as people, may not have the same value? Okay. All right. You know, if we look at Mao with the Great Leap Forward program, just that program alone, historians will tend to put 30 to 40 million people And a good number of the 30 to 40 million people were actually his base, which is the peasants. All right. The intention of the Great Leap Forward program was to do what?
Superpower of the soul.
Well, we have to build on that thought there. What is he trying to improve in China to become a power? The industry, the economy. Wanted to excel, a great leap forward, and create that communist state. And that was his intention. And that meant reshaping a little bit of the agriculture, reshaping the industry, and the result of it was a disaster. All right. But then overall, we're looking at anywhere from 30 to 70 million people are going to die because of various programs by Mao. That's a lot. That's a lot. All right. And I suppose if we times it by 10, you know, that's a lot of people. If we add over time and all that stuff, which I don't think you necessarily really can. But when we look at China today, let's look at China today. We consider China a powerful country. Right? What makes it a powerful country?
So it's not as divided as our country. It's the population is the same. I guess.
All right. So we don't know how divided necessarily, one could say, because of control of information. It's a lot better, but we don't know the full extent. You bring up some good points. That wise population, we're talking about 1.4 billion people. All right, so that's a lot of people, right? So then I suppose if you put it in perspective, how many people are killed, and then a big population. All right, go ahead.
They're like just economically and globally really powerful.
Absolutely. Economically, they are the second strongest economy. And the United States is still number one, but that gap is closing. And it's very well possible they are projecting by 2050. So hopefully in your lifetime and in my lifetime, because my goal is to be a centenarian, so I still would be alive. China would be number one, India would be number two, and the United States would be number three, is what the numbers are projecting there. All right, so economically, they are to be reckoned with. Okay. Any other indications of how that can show that they're powerful?
I think it's also important to note that, because China is communist, like that's sort of like the way that they deal with the countries diplomatically, and so it's like they really have the power to control the types of economies of other countries just through being that powerful and like having that influence.
Yes.
Globally.
And they do have that influence, and they're able to exercise that influence, and it's become very, very over the years. It's definitely something that nations need to deal with, and we know that if the United States or the European Union or some other country isn't going to get involved, we know that China is going to fill that vacuum. And we can see that with a number of initiatives, and even with the vaccination. They're even talking about vaccination diplomacy, in that we'll hook up with the vaccine, but here's what we're also looking for. So there's some strings attached with it as well. Militarily, China is viewed as the number 3 most powerful country. The United States is still viewed as the top, and then Russia and China. But China is beginning to really flex itself here. And this is all the intention, one would say, or the vision that Mao had. Okay? So is this the good that comes out of the destruction? Is this the good that comes out of the destruction? I see some heads going this way. And then I see some like, What still gives us that hesitation?
Morally, it's I'm not saying, like, I can't necessarily agree that it's good, but I do agree that it's what builds the foundation of a great power.
Okay. So I think you're throwing out there the morality, you're throwing out the ethics piece there. Ethically, one would say, is this the means you go about getting the ends that you're looking for? All that stuff. You can talk about human rights, you can talk about genocide conventions, all that stuff. And intention. Did Mao intend to kill as many as ultimately did under him? Well, there are some that could be divided on that piece there, but maybe there are some of that 70 million, if we go with the big numbers, some of that 70 million could be attributed to specific policies, and the others could be like, no, we didn't intend that, but oops, we didn't intend it to happen. We talked in the video yesterday, they talked about the government took more rice than expected. And that's going to cause famine in the countryside, not so much in the city, but in the countryside where the famine is going to happen. If we look at the Soviet Union, when in the 1930s, they're going to have a famine as well. And a lot of it has to do with the result of the government taking more grain, more than anticipated, bringing it to the city or selling it on the international market so they can use to help modernize. And you have famine in the countryside. Is that intentional? Is that unintentional? It's hard to know because documents are not always declassified. Documents can't always find, and especially with China, they are very guarded with their documents. So you might see some really different numbers. Okay, it's just something to think about here. With that, I'm surprised no one threw out the old Thanos argument. All right, if you're into the Avengers, all right. And I know if Miss Iden was here, she'd probably like, "Oh, you just said Thanos. What's wrong with you?" And it's like, no, sorry, But Thanos, in some ways, he talked about these things. All right. I have a video here I want to show, and it is called The Cultural Revolution. So yesterday was about the Great Leap Forward. And that was part of the modernization effort. And then what happened to Mao at the end of the Great Leap Forward? He stepped back. All right. It was more his way of like giving himself a timeout, if we want to look at that. Gave himself a timeout to kind of reflect. But if anything, Mao is worried that people are going to forget the revolution, forget about that experience. Really what the big goal is for China. And so he's plotting his time back, and it's going to be called the Cultural Revolution. And you will find countries in general, it doesn't have to be a communist country, but countries in general, they tend to have cultural revolutions. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your extreme left and right. It can be any country has its cultural revolutions. It's probably the methods we can look at and the intentions and the results of it. China's going to go through a cultural revolution. The Soviet Union went through a cultural revolution in the 20s. It's about creating the type of culture, the type of atmosphere that they want. And they're going to do it in the 1960s. All right. So as we watch this video clip, I want you to take a look at intentions. History Channel. I did reference Messiah in class because I just said, you know, Yep. She would have said that. She would have said that. All right. So here, us to take a look at the Cultural Revolution. Let's take a look at reasons behind it, methods, and the impact. Okay. Now remember, he wanted to create a rather plain society in some ways. But when I look at that image, he's kind of in his own private car, living life large. So some would say, come on, man, practice what you preach. All right, so here we go. Let's get that. All right. Let me mute myself at home.
Revolution was going off the boil. He saw a privileged bureaucratic class emerging, as had happened in the Soviet Union. He feared the return of capitalism and materialist incentives. He believed China's chance to have a perfect socialist society was passing. Mao's supporters printed a book of quotations from his political speeches and writing, and used them as the basis for a new attack on what was called the capitalist road. Still have to wage a protracted struggle against bourgeois and petty bourgeois ideology, said Mao. As he tried to regain power, Mao used a piece of spectacular political showmanship to revive his reputation. To demonstrate his continuing vigor, at the age of 72, he led a mass swim across the river Yangtze. Trying to break the thinking and attitudes of old China, he began with her traditional culture. The 1,000-year-old Beijing opera was singled out as the start of his attack. If it could be changed, then anything could be. 8 new revolutionary plays were written to replace all the old stories of emperors and concubines. Tung Shangling, who once played a princess, now the leading officer in the People's Army.
我能拿到这个角色，就由我来演。 I was chosen to play the revolutionary role, and it was a great honor.
很光荣。我们是灵魂的工程师，我们有一种
As artists, we were engineers of human
演出
souls.
为赚钱吃饭，或者是简单的工作，而且我们有一种责
We
任
didn't just perform to
我
earn
们这种
money,
责任感
but had a serious responsibility to re-educate
起
people.
了一定的教育作用。我们非常幸福。
We were so happy that Chairman Mao was creatively involved in this opera.
By late 1966, the great proletarian cultural revolution was well underway. The group behind it, led by Mao's wife, and later to be called the Gang of Four, tried to build the Mao cult to new heights. In school, children recited his message to them. In Shanghai, at the No. 6 girls' school, Xiao Ailing was the headmistress.
我们同学就感到外态的变化、上海的变化。
The pupils came to realize that all the changes taking place in their families, at school, in Shanghai and China were brought about by Chairman Mao.
毛泽东带给我们的。
Students were used to carry the Cultural Revolution forward. For the first time, young people were encouraged to attack authority and the old hierarchy of the party. And the advice came from Mao himself. Bombard the headquarters, he said. To rebel is justified. One of the Beijing students who were the first to call themselves Red Guards was Zhang Baoqing.
毛主席发动的文化大革命，这实际上是毛主席
Chairman Mao started the Cultural Revolution to keep up the momentum for change.
说的
Everything he
全是
said was
正
right.
全是正确，都是真
We
理。
thought if we follow
只
Mao,
要
we
是
can't
跟着
go
毛主
wrong.
席走就没有错。只有毛主席能
Only he can
带
lead
领
us
我
from
们
one
从胜利
victory to
走到
another.
胜利。
A succession of huge rallies were held in Tiananmen Square. The master of mass mobilization had shown he could still draw a political response directly from the people. This time, it wasn't the peasants in the country who did his bidding. The most educated and energetic generation in China were following his every word. The students felt excited and liberated as never before. An estimated 11 million Red Guards came to see Mao. 15-year-old Zhao Shoujun was presented to him.
那个时候呢，我是只顾的激动，只顾的兴奋。
I was so overwhelmed by the excitement, my mind just went blank. The only thing I wanted to do was to get a good look at Chairman Mao and shake his hand if I got the chance.
我要多握几次毛主席的手，一有机会我就要去跟那
I
个
shook
毛
hands
主席握
with
手。
him 3
我一共
times.
跟毛主席握了
Because I'd been
3次
received by
手。10
Chairman
万
Mao,
100万的
millions of
红
Red
军
Guards regarded me with awe.
认为我是也是一个很
When
伟
they
大
saw me,
的人。
I always wanted to
见
shake
了我
the
的
hand
第
that
一面
Chairman
呢，
Mao
就是
had
要跟
shaken.
我握手，握我毛主席握过的手。
The rising fervor was directed at Mao's rivals, including President Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping. Banners attacked Liu. Even small children were taught to denounce Liu. The rage was extended to foreign governments, with attacks on Western diplomats in Beijing. Almost anyone who was in power of any kind was denounced as a capitalist rhoder. The whole structure of the party was brought down, including Zhong Guodong, the district secretary in Tianjin.
In all the
previous campaigns, I'd been singling people out and telling them their mistakes. I was the one who found fault with them. I didn't expect the tables to be turned on me this time round. Some of the biggest high school students who were very loyal to Chairman Mao pressed my head down, twisted both my hands behind my back, and made me bend over throughout the denunciation meeting. I didn't think I'd survive.
In Sichuan, Luo Shifa, the party secretary who'd helped his village through the famine, was denounced.
I didn't
expect the Cultural Revolution would affect me. Why should it? I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, and always had the support of the people. At the denunciation meeting, they slapped my face and forced me to kneel down. Kneeling on hot charcoal and broken glass was almost a daily routine. So what I did was to put a soft pad inside my trousers, and that made it easier when I was forced to my knees.
In schools, pupils attacked their teachers.
Our headmaster had been really good to us, but even he couldn't escape. We didn't hate him personally, but he represented bourgeois values, so we had to attack him. We dragged our headmaster onto the school stage. Then students put a dunce's cap on his head and a big placard around his neck. The more extreme we were, the more loyal we felt to Chairman Mao.
In Shanghai, the teacher who had taught her class to love Mao was now accused of being disloyal.
There were several hundred Red Guards wearing armbands. Others had military belts. Some had scissors in their hands ready to cut people's hair. They chopped off my hair and beat me with sticks. They ordered me to produce the Red Book and to recite that revolution means rebellion and violence. That day I was wearing a white shirt without pockets, so I wasn't carrying the Red Book with me. They said, if you're not carrying the Red Book, that means you aren't loyal to Chairman Mao. How dare you say you love Chairman Mao? You deserve to be overthrown.
It was December in Shanghai and very cold. They ordered me to stand outside in the playground from morning till night. But then they thought the punishment wasn't severe enough. So they got a big blackboard and pressed it down on me. One of them stood on the right side and one on the left, like a seesaw, and I was squashed in the middle. They wanted to knock me down and keep me down forever. Xiao Ling was left with permanent injuries to her face. Up to 1 million were killed or driven to suicide. The country was now in the grip of a revolutionary mania that became more and more violent and destructive. The Red Guards attacked the four olds: old habits, old ideas, old customs, old culture. Books were burnt and museums pillaged. Soon, rival factions of Red Guards fought one another.
We used clubs and guns. Many were beaten until they bled, others died. But we all felt we were the true defenders of Chairman Mao's revolution. To die for the great leader was an honor.
The anarchy spread. Schools and hospitals closed. Offices and factories were in chaos.
The factory almost came to a standstill. Production was impossible.
I think we have an understanding of the Cultural Revolution. We don't necessarily have to watch much more of it. So what really was Mao's intent here with the Cultural Revolution? You know, if we want to look at the reasons behind all this, you know, what's the reasons? What do you got? So he looks at the Cultural Revolution as a way to unify all China. Okay. So to do that means you got to get rid of the old culture. Okay. All right. What else?
Really, he just wanted to strengthen this.
Okay. And in the Cultural Revolution, you can make a good claim that his cult of personality does get stronger. They come up with a little red book full of his quotes, and all it is quotes. And, you know, when we first started, well, when I first started teaching this class back in, I think it's 2010, and we started getting iPads here, I thought for just out of giggles, went to the App Store and typed in Little Red Book, just curious, and there's an app for a Little Red Book, you know, and I you know, I bought it. It was 99 cents, and just to look at it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. The Little Red Book has gone techno here with the app, but yeah, you know, his cult of personality grows so that could be a reasoning as well. But when we look at methods, how is this carried out? How is the Cultural Revolution carried out?
It's mostly done by
okay. All right, so it's done primarily by the youth. I mean, that's the means here, and the youth, a good number of them are coming from the city. And they are well educated, one would say. They're the educated, they're young, and I suppose we could go back and we can say, well, how many young people are now out in the countryside? But these are people who may not have been there at the beginning, may not have experienced the Civil War. And so wants them to experience what a revolutionary society is as well. Definitely the means here. Why? And again, another part of this why, you know, who are they attacking? Because they view that those are threats to this new culture. So let's talk about impact. What's the impact of the Cultural Revolution here on China? What kind of impact do we have? All right. As said here in the chat, to show growth but contribute or control growth. Okay, that could again speak of the why to do about it. But if we look at impact here, how did it impact China? No, it doesn't look good at all. It's almost like you gotta hit the reset button again here, because throughout all this revolutionary chaos, is the business getting done? No, business is not getting done. You know, productivity is going down. That's a problem. So again, here is an impact again of, we look at Mao's policies. Here's his intention, reality, another step back. I think by 1976, when Mao dies, and ultimately you can say that's when the Cultural Revolution really comes to an end, people are probably like, we gotta end this thing. We gotta end this revolution. We've been in a perpetual state of revolution, it seems like, forever. And so those individuals that want to carry on Mao's revolutionary zeal, that Gang of Four and others, they're going to quickly be marginalized. And one of the guys that was being removed, Deng Xiaoping, he's going to survive all this. This guy's a survivor. You know, we can say all we want to say about his 4'11" body. All right, but that guy's a survivor. He's sent out to the countryside where many of these Red Guards are sent to the countryside to cool off. So he got to cool off. He gets sent out to the side to get kind of reprogrammed as well. He comes back. But Deng Xiaoping, you know, he's got some pretty powerful allies, and I'll talk more about those powerful allies on Thursday. All right, so the Cultural Revolution. One could say Mao had some intentions. If you want to throw in the word good intentions, reality is it's going to have some mixed results with it. Okay, so with that, does anyone have any other questions or concerns about the video clip here on the Cultural Revolution? Anything you want to add? All right, your task is to work on the domestic and foreign policy activity. All right. And it is due tomorrow. And so let's work on that. And so those at home, you can stay on or exit and have a great day. Those that are here, let's work on it, bust a move. Let's have it done for tomorrow, okay? All right, I'm going to cut you loose.